Alright, so today we're going to talk about bucktails. Just different grades of bucktails, what you should ask for, depending on the patterns you're going to tie. I've seen diagrams people draw now saying, this part of the bucktail is good, this part's not good for anything, this is good for this. And you can't just, generalize bucktails. Every single one is kind of unique. And, the hair structure, the amount of crinkle they have, whether it's soft fibers or thick fibers, it's going to play a big role in how it ties, how it ties into your fly. So I just have a couple different bucktails here. These kind of run the gamut from long and straight to soft and crinkly, and just wanted to get into, what each certain one is good for, and and what to look for when you come into the shop and you open a package, or what to leave in the comments when you're placing an online order for us to pick out for you. So, a lot of people just tie standard clousers, and, you can never have enough clousers because the fly works great. And what a lot of people ask for, and I think, if you don't have a lot of experience tying, a lot of people just say, I want the longest, straightest fibers I can get. And a lot of times that's not the case. Longest fibers, yeah, but straight, not so much. For a bucktail to be perfectly straight and not have any of this nice crinkle in there, it means that the fibers of the bucktail have to be relatively stiff, and they have to be relatively thick for that to happen as well. And bucktail isn't really a hollow hair on the deer. The belly hair is, the back hair is. That's why it splays so nice when you're tying deer hair bugs. Bucktail doesn't have a lot of hollow hairs. Some of them do have a little bit of hollowness to them, and those are going to be the long, really straight ones that are thick. These thin ones that have a little bit of crinkle are actually what you're looking for. You really want the finest, thinnest, with a little bit of crinkle hair you can find. Because when you tie this down on a hook, it's not hollow at all. It's not going to splay when you put a lot of tension on it. And this little bit of crinkle is going to cause the hairs to stay, kind of locked together, however you tie them in. You can tell a lot about how a bucktail is going to lay on a hook when you just pick it up in the shop. If you pinch out, a little section like this, and then you kind of stroke it in your hands, you can see how it's going to lay. And you can see if I just add a lot of tension at the bottom of this isn't going to splay out all over the place. This is relatively fine hair. It's long and it's crinkly, so it's going to stay where I want it. If I got something like this, this is a little bit thicker. And as soon as I start to push on it, you can see this hair is splaying out all over the place. Now it's going to happen when I tie it into the hook too, especially these really long hairs. There's ways to combat this, and I'll demonstrate that when I go to tie these onto the hook in a little bit. But, just because the hair is the longest and it's the straightest doesn't mean it's going to be the best to tie flies with. Especially if the tail has a natural curve and it's long and straight and stiff. It's hard to get this curve out of there. There's ways to do it. You can do it with heat. You can do it with water. It's just a lot of extra steps that you might not need. So be realistic when you're shopping for bucktails. Exactly how long fibers you're going to need. And try to find the finest ones with a little bit of crinkle. See, this is a beautiful tail. The other thing to look for when you're looking in the tail is uniformity in the length of the fur. If you look at this tail is like the epitome of a bucktail that I would use. These fibers are like 4 to 5 inches long. They're all the same length. So when you cut a chunk of this off, you're not going to be pulling a lot of little hairs out. You're not going to have a lot of long hairs, all over the place. They're all going to be relatively uniform. If you look at something like this, again, I have hairs that are this short next to hairs that are this long. And when I cut a chunk of this out, unless I have a hair stacker and I'm trying to stack the thing, I'm going to waste about half of these hairs. Some of them are tiny, some of them are super long. It's just a really inconsistent tail. And that, goes throughout the whole entire tail. So that's just another thing to look for when you're in the shop. You might see a little inconspicuous tail like this, and think, oh, that tail's not that long. It's not that, I don't know if I can use it for what I need. But in reality, these fibers here are definitely long enough. It's definitely a nice fine tail, and it's got a lot of nice crinkle on it. So it's going to stay where you want it when you tie it onto the hook. The hardest fibers to work with on the bucktail are going to be the ones near the base. Those are the thickest. You know, they're going to have a little bit of, sometimes they're hollow, a little bit hollow, or maybe halfway up the fiber, down near the base of the follicle. The tip of the bucktail is always the easiest to tie in. It's always usually the finest fur with the least amount of memory. And the middle's kind of like where you get, you know, your nice long fibers, like your all-purpose fibers. So when you look at the tail, you know, try to break it into like 3 sections. You know, all right, these bottom fibers are going to be a little bit harder to work with. So, you know, I'll find a use for them, but, you know, they might not be the best for everything. If I can get a nice, long working section, you know, from here all the way down, I'm going to get a lot of use out of this tail. And the tips, you know, I save these things for like smaller flies. If I'm going to tie salmon flies, like willy guns, where I have to wrap them around, you know, the tube and get them to lay down uniformly. Anywhere where I really want the bucktail to lay down uniformly, I'm going to use the tips. They're great for tails, for flies, because, you know, it stays exactly where you want it. But hey, there's a couple things to look for when you're shopping for bucktails. You know, some bucktails you'll get, you know, the hair length will be half this size. But, you know, that's fine too. If all the hairs are uniform length and you know, the flies you're tying, you don't need, you know, 3 or 4 inch fibers, you know, this is going to work out just fine. You know, realistically, as long as you can get, you know, maybe, you know, up to your knuckle of you know, length in the bucktail fibers, you're going to be perfectly fine for a lot of different fly patterns. So now I'm going to show you how these different bucktails will tie on to hooks, and I'll give you a little bit of pointers that I've come up with along the way on how to get, you know, squirrely bucktails, and, you know, maybe you got some pieces left over, a lot of base stems and stuff like that, and you're having trouble getting them to tie in the hook where you want it. Maybe I can give you some tips and some tricks on how to get these things to lay down really flat and nice for you. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a nice base of thread on here. You never want to tie bucktail onto a bear hook. No matter what the recipe says, at least in your tying point, you want to have some thread down there. And then, you know, when I cut off a piece of bucktail, usually don't want any more than like half a pencil, you know, volume at a time. I'm just gonna take the bucktail. Usually I hold the tips. I pull out all the little small hairs in the back. And then one of the most important steps a lot of people forget when they have this bucktail, they try to tie in uneven ends. When you go to tie in, always make sure your butt ends are at least even. Then you'll see when I go to tie this in, I just lay this on top of the hook. And then my first wrap isn't a tight wrap. It's just to get it on there. Then what I like to do is I like to hold the back up, because that's going to keep it on top of the hook. And then I'll just go down. Now, this is all light tension here. And it's important to note that most of us in the shop don't use these bobbins that have, you know, adjustable tensions on them. We all like to adjust the tension of our bobbin in the palm of our hand, because, like I said, this is all light. I'm tying this in light right now. And when I tie this in light, the back doesn't splay. But now that I have, you know, these wraps in the back are kind of light and they're holding it so it won't splay, now I can go in and I can lock this down really tight up in the front. And it's not going to cause this bucktail to splay at all. Let's see, I can get there and stop going really tight all the way up to that last loose wrap I have. And it's going to stay exactly where I want it. If I go past this wrap and tie it in tight, watch what happens. See, it'll start curling around the hook. If this was hollow bucktail and I went and tied this in tight, this would splay out all over the place. You know, some fly patterns, that's kind of what they want, is it to splay out all over the place. But for this, it's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for a nice way to tie in bucktail on the back of the hook. And that's exactly what we just did there. So yeah, you know, if you want to add another layer of bucktail on top of that, you know, just go all the way out to the front. And so we wanted to add, kind of doing things backwards here, but this is the longest fibers I have. Now I'm taking a chunk from down near the back of that really long, squirrely, fluorescent yellow bucktail, where we have really long fibers, some really short fibers. And again, if I want to line these up, I'll probably grab this about halfway, because I at least want half the length of this for all my fibers, and then I'll pull out, and you'll see some little short ones came out. And then what I'll do is I'll take these tips and I'll pull these tips out, and I'll just realign them with the rest of the tips, and you'll see what that's going to do. It's just going to cause me to have a whole bunch of longer bucktails at the end. And I'll do that a couple times. Kind of, if you stroke your finger down, see how like they splay out. You can see where you have your short ones right there. So just pull out the longer ones. Just lay them back down. And what I'll do is I'll take these, cut them off flush like I said, and then again, right on top. You can see I have a lot of bucktail here, but it's not hard to tie in. A couple loose wraps. Go down the back again with more loose wraps. Right till we get about, where we want to stop. And then we'll just stop. And then we can go back over and we can lock these in tight. And again, this is tight tension right now. Really tight. These hairs are not going to pull out. I'm doing this with the palm of my hand and my bobbin, holding everything on top. And then when I get to the back, I loosen up the tension. That's why it's so important to have a bobbin that has, no preset tension on it. So you want to be able to make light wraps, and then you want to be able to make really, really tight wraps going back. All right, so that's just how we're going to tie bucktail onto the top of a hook. Pretty easy. We'll go on to a few other things. Okay, now the other thing people have a lot of problems with is some fly patterns, like I was saying, the Willy gun, even though it's a tube fly, a lot of salmon flies, they'll have you wrap bucktail around the whole entire outside of the hook, top and bottom, and they have you do it from one wrap. And I know, a lot of YouTube videos, people will do this, and it will look, whoever's tying it will make it look so easy, and it can be really frustrating for a beginner. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay a couple wraps down at the very tip of the hook. I'm just gonna cut that off. Now, for this style, I like to use the tips of these bucktails. You can also buy Bucktail Pieces, which is just going to be basically a lot of tips of bucktails in a bag. Really affordable way to get some nice hair that it's not terribly long, but it's some of the easiest hair to work with out of the whole bucktail. It's usually only the tips, and like I was saying, the tips have the finest diameter of hair follicle. So it's going to be the least hollow. Usually there's a lot of crinkle up near the tip. They like to lay together, really easily. So they kind of do, they're just really easy to work with. You can kind of place them, and they'll stay where you place them, and you can do a lot of different things with the tips. It's only, like I said, the only drawback is a lot of times it's not terribly long fur. So I'll just take a chunk out. Again, that's pretty thick. That's like the diameter of a pencil. But to do this kind of fly, I'm probably gonna lose about half of this. I'm gonna grab it like 3/4 up. I'm just gonna pull out everything that's short. And then I'm gonna grab it. I'm gonna take everything that's long. I'm just gonna get rid of that as well. You can save these hairs and put them in a hair starter and use them for blending, things like flat wings and stuff later on. Until I get, now I'm at about probably half a diameter of a pencil. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay it on my hook, and usually flies like this, you want it about twice the hook length. So I'm gonna pinch it like that. I'm gonna get my measurement. I'm gonna say right about there. This is where I'm gonna cut it. I'm just gonna go ahead and snip that off. Now what I'm gonna do, again, this is where you need a bobbin that has variable tension. You can create the tension with the palm of your hand. You're gonna put it on top of the hook. 2 loose wraps. We call these collecting wraps. And what that's gonna, you can even do 3. What that's gonna do is it's gonna, you can even let go. You can place the bucktail there. This is where you're gonna need your fingernail. What we're gonna do is we're gonna hold the ends. Put the bobbin back in the palm of our hands. We're gonna get our fingernail, and we're gonna go just move it back and forth around the outside of this hook. Now it's important to notice that where I'm going to pinch with my fingernail, I don't have any thread underneath. If I were to have thread underneath, it'd be harder for this to kind of wrap around. I do have thread in the front, so the bucktail will stick to where the thread is, but I want some, I want some wiggle room back there to get this to be able to be manipulated around the hook. So I'm just gonna hold it like this. I'm gonna get my fingernail, and you see when I get my fingernail and I pinch it around, it's gonna start to move around both sides of the hook. Now I can even let it, loosen it up a wrap. I can pinch with my fingers to get it around the whole thing. And once I'm happy with it, I'll do a couple more collecting wraps. Then I'm gonna pull down tight, bind it. Then I can, just that one wrap of tight, it's gonna allow me to really place this now exactly how I want it. And as long as it's distributed evenly around the hook, I'm gonna say that's good. And then I'm gonna lock it down. Go right up to the front, tight wraps, right over what we just did. We'll just lock it down right there. And you'll see we'll have a nice 360-degree lock-in of hair right there. Now you can keep this like this. You can add more hair on top. Flies like the Willy gun. You can add more hair up here, and I'll just do that with a different color so you can see how it blends in. Again, just take the tip of the bucktail. Just gonna grate it a little bit. Take out the really short hairs. Now you see, this is a lot more stiffer than the last one. So this is gonna splay a lot more. So I'm gonna have to be careful when I tie it in not to use too much tension at first. And then get out a little bit more. This is an accent color. I want it to go just a little bit longer than the other one. And I really don't want this one to be on the bottom of the fly, but I want it to go down the sides. I want it to go right down the sides of the fly. So I'm gonna tie it in right there. A couple loose wraps. Get my fingernail, pinch this side, pinch that side. Once I'm about at the, right along so it's parallel with the hook, then I'm just gonna tie this head in with a nice tight tension. Now if it starts to splay on you, if you go too tight and it starts to splay like that just did, just back off, give it a couple loose wraps right there, and I'll just keep it laying how you want it. And you can go right back up to the front. So now we have fur on the top and the sides of this fly, and on the underside of the fly. Now if we wanted to add some, to the top, the longest fur, we can just take some of this really long, harder to work with fluorescent chartreuse fur. Again, I'm gonna take it, and for this I'm gonna use some really long fibers so it kind of hangs over the top, but not crazy long like these. So I'll just pull these out. That looks good. We'll get rid of all the short ones. Again, some more short ones we can get rid of. Maybe we'll butt these together. Take your time with this stuff. Get it perfect. And then we're just gonna have this be a little bit longer. It's kind of the wing, so right about there. And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna cut them even. Put them right on top. Now this is all loose right now. All right, now I just bound it down tight. I'm gonna go back with a couple more loose wraps so this doesn't splay all over the place, and you'll see it's right there, right on top. I can get my fingernail, go down the sides just a tad. Just kind of blends in with the rest of the fly. And we'll just clean it up. Some tight wraps all around the front. Now, just a regular bucktail fly like this will catch you tons of stripers. When I first started tying flies, I just had like maybe 10 bags of those Bucktail Pieces, and I would just tie up a ton of flies like this. They don't foul, they're easy to cast, they're easy to tie. You fill up a box pretty easy. Let's give us a couple whip finishes. And we'll cut it off, and you'll see, once you get it like this, just take the fibers, make sure they're even on both sides of the hook. And with bucktail, I like to kind of go down, and if you give it like a little twist like this, it blends the whole thing together. You'll see, you have it's a nice bucktail fly. So yeah, showed you how to tie it in all the way down the hook, like Clouser style. That's how you tie it up in the front. You know, if this was black thread with a couple eyes up there, you know, you'd have a really easy fly to use. Yeah, it's natural material. There's no substitute for bucktail. There's a lot of things out there, whether it's you know, full bucktail or super hair, or there's a Farrar. There's a ton of materials out there that try to replicate what this natural material does, and there's nothing that really substitutes it perfectly. So you kind of need bucktail. Like I said, flies like this, you're fine with just buying bucktail tips. Hopefully this video helped you when you go into the store, or you know what to ask for, what kind of bucktails you want to ask for when you you know, if you're placing an online order. Yeah, you can get some nice flies tied up.